Honestly, I can't tell if I'm in focus even with my glasses on, so shall we just proceed? Hello, let's talk about books. I don't even want to know. Blah, 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 blah. Your parcel is coming today. Oh, I wonder if there's more books in that. There is more books in that. All right, anyway, Shush Australia Post. We've got to talk about books we've already read. Okay. If you're new, and welcome, that is awesome. In this series, I'm talking about the books that I have read in 5-book chunks because it just makes it a bit more manageable for me and hopefully for you, depending on how much waffle I put in and subsequently cut out. Having said that, with 5-book chunks, this time I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, okay. Because half of those, or 6 of them, were part of a short story series. So I'm just lumping them all together and calling them one book. There's also a lot of Kindle reading in this installment. That's just how it turned out. Let's go with The City of Last Chances by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This came out in late 2022, although I think the physical version in Australia was 23. Who even knows with publishing these days? They come on Kindle straight away and then you have to wait 6 months for a book. And it is a weird one. I read the first chapter on the Kindle sample and immediately said, no, this is not the one for me. And then my book club read Children of Time, the spider one by Adrian Tchaikovsky. And so some of us in the book club said, we've already read Children of Time, let's read City of Last Chances as well because it's a new one and it's fantasy, not science fiction. So I came back to it, and once I got past that first chapter, it actually started to get a vibe and I really enjoyed it. It is a story that's, each chapter is a different POV character, and for, I want to say half the book, the first half of the book, each POV is a different character, a character that you haven't met before. So I really enjoyed that, but then it started circling around back to characters that we'd seen before in order to wrap up the story. Apart from that, it's your basic fantasy city in the oppressors have come in, they occupied the city, all the factions that have been oppressed are grouped in their own little area of the city and they're all working towards rebellion. There are some cool elements. There is a forest in this world that is basically a portal to another universe, dimension. Other people, other creatures live in there, but it's only briefly explored. There's a part of the city that collapsed and there's some weird ghost stuff happening there, which is cool and interesting and was more a part of the story, but not really. There's essentially just these people that we're following and the way they're coping in this city that's under occupation and ways in which they are attempting to rebel or survive under occupation. So in that sense, it's a standard fantasy and it was really interesting. I really liked it. I did say I would love to read a sequel, knowing that it was standalone, and then was subsequently informed that a sequel is coming or something else written in this universe. So I'm very excited for that. Don't be put off by the part where I said it's a standard fantasy. Sometimes that's what you want. You don't want something new and trying to push the bounds. You just want something comfortable that explores something like colonialism and oppression within an interesting framework, which is often what you get in fantasy and science fiction. And I really enjoyed it here. I gave it 3.5 stars. Next up is one that I listened to, but I do have a prop because I have my my husband's beat up copy, and that is A Crown of Swords by Robert Jordan. This is book 7 in the Wheel of Time, and I am officially halfway through the Wheel of Time if we don't count the prequel book, which I probably won't read. So we're going to get there. We're going to get there. What happens in this one? What does the blurb say? A Crown of Swords is a complex, multi-layered novel full of action, adventure, and political maneuvering, as well as themes of power, responsibility, and sacrifice. It continues the epic journey of the Wheel of Time series, setting the stage for even greater conflicts and revelations to come. Like I said for the previous book, whatever that was called, it's really they've come into their power. They're becoming leaders of their own little areas. All these people that left the Two Rivers at the beginning of the books, which feels like 100 years ago, but it's, I feel like less than a year of game time, of story time. And they're just all, at this point, big picture stuff. So some of the girls from the Two Rivers, well, they're women, obviously, are doing high-level magic stuff that the magic faction, the Aes Sedai, have declared impossible. and trying to counteract the force of the Dark One on the world. Somebody in that dark faction has stopped the weather, so it's just hot all the time in the middle of winter, and the women are trying to find some magic object to help counteract that. I don't even remember what Rand did. He fought a bad guy, and actually this bit really annoyed me. He fought a bad guy. No, he left all his guards like a teenage boy would do. He ran away from all his guards and subsequently got into a fight where he was severely injured and basically in a coma for 3 days. And when he came out of the coma, he then took himself off to liberate a city from the Dark One, or one of the Dark One's minions. And while they were having this fight in the city, he makes a portal to a spooky, corrupted, evil city and fights this bad guy there by himself. Nobody knows where he went. And then he reckons he killed this bad guy, and I don't believe that he has. There's no evidence that the bad guy is dead. So anyway, that's Rand being a teenage boy. There's a lot of the other two male characters that came from the Two Rivers as well, even though they dip in and out. The story focuses on Rand and then maybe one or two in depth of other characters. We see a character come back into the main group, which is really nice. I missed that person. And ultimately, the story progresses. Honestly, if you've not read it and have no intention of reading it, these updates are boring. Anyway, A Crown of Swords, Book 7, I gave it 3.5 stars. Next was The Three-Body Problem by Cixin Liu, translated by Ken Liu. This won so many awards when it first came into English, and I probably won awards in Chinese too, just because of the hype, and then it getting translated to English wouldn't probably have happened so quickly if people didn't like it. Won the 2015 Hugo, says this little fake sticker on the cover. This was supposed to be a buddy read with a friend of mine, and I didn't write anything in the buddy reads because I was reading it before bed, and that's not conducive to getting out my phone and type. And also a lot of it annoyed me. So it's the story, there's two stories here, one set in the 60s, 70s, and then one set in the present. So the backdrop is Cultural Revolution China. The main woman, Yi Wenji, witnesses the Red Guard beating her father to death, and subsequently, like, she's traumatized obviously, but she's also politically suspect because of her association with her father. And so everything she tries to do after that, she's always acting under the suspicion of the government, and eventually comes to a point where she's exiled to like a military base where they're doing secret alien research, although she doesn't know that at first. She's told she can never leave because she's politically dodgy. Just because of the Cultural Revolution, not that her father actually did anything, and not that she actually did anything until she got to this military base. Anyway, it turns out she contacts aliens. That's a little bit of a spoiler, but also necessary for the rest of the book. So the rest of the book is set in modern day, like 2010s China, and what's his name? Wang Miao is a nanotech scientist, and he's recruited into... It's set like a spy thriller movie where this guy who's just your regular ordinary scientist is pulled away one day to attend this meeting of like all these high-level cops and military and scientists and associated with other factions like this all over the world. And he's like, what is happening? And they tell him you're either in or you're out, without any details. If you can picture that in a movie, that's exactly what happens in this book. He's lured in, and then he can't leave because it's a mystery that he wants to solve, and then it freaks him out entirely. And one of the initial things that freaks him out is he can see these numbers flashing across his eyes and nobody else can see them. He's a photographer, and when he develops his film, the numbers, the countdown is in his images as well. It's in digital images. And so he has a freak out moment where he's taking all these photos, and then he gets his wife to take photos, and she's never been allowed to touch his cameras before. And he's like, go take the photos, let the kid take photos. And he develops them to test this, whether they have the countdown or if it's just him. And his wife is a bit like, what is happening? And fair enough. And then the story progresses and it gets further into what is the mystery of the book and the aliens. But the whole time I'm thinking, what's up with his wife? Like, her husband has had this major weird freak out situation and he goes off for days. He doesn't come home at night. Like, surely she's got to be wondering what the fuck is happening. And it's not mentioned at all. That made me really mad. Really mad. It would have been nice to have some, you know, even in those moments when he was home, rather than his wife being concerned, like fully like, what is up with you? This is weird. So I did not enjoy that part. Ultimately, it comes down to like these big ideas about humanity and whether humanity is worth saving. But overall, the execution is pretty poor, in my opinion. I don't know if that's the core story or the translation, and I suspect it's the core story. And I just did not like it. I gave it 2 stars. Big ideas, but I didn't vibe with the execution. And there's so much physics in here. Oh my goodness. Which is a hallmark of hard science fiction, is putting the science in, but I didn't care. 2 stars. Rightio. Next up, I read Planetfall by Emma Newman. This was a book club pick. This one's a few years old. It came out in 2015. And there's more in the series, but they're all like in the same universe rather than continuation of this story. This is told by the point of view of Ren, who has colonized another planet with approximately 1,000 others. Ren's bestie was in a coma on Earth, and when she came out of the coma, she had seen coordinates on how to reach God. So Ren's bestie, Sumi, she gathered together some financial backers and some believers, and they all have useful science skills, and they all go off to this planet to meet God. And now they've been on this planet for 20 years, and it's the POV of Ren living on the planet and just living her life on another planet with all these other colonists. In that way, it's a really pedestrian story. In fact, it's a really nothing story. But the part that I really liked, and the part that you see a lot, is inside Ren's point of view. She struggles with anxiety, although I don't think she realizes she's struggling with the anxiety. And so it's a really interesting and nuanced exploration of what it's like just to have anxiety in your day-to-day life and how that impacts what you do and how you interact with people and how you interact with the world. And I loved it. A lot of people in my book club noped out of it straight away because Ren's anxiety was triggering their anxious reaction or something similar. But as somebody with anxiety, even though it doesn't take the form of Ren's, just the way that she would react to certain stimuli or not react to it or retreat from it, I found that such a real depiction of anxious behavior, and I really, really loved it. And of course, well, not of course, but Ren's anxiety does become a major plot point. So I really liked it, but if that's going to trigger some feels that you're not comfortable feeling today, don't read it. Otherwise, perfectly cromulent science fiction. I'm just looking at what kind of stars I gave it. 3.5. And then the final 6 are short stories that I read on my Kindle. This is part of an Amazon exclusive. Oh, these birds. Amazon Originals exclusive to Amazon Prime or Amazon Kindle Unlimited, depending on which territory you live in, and Audible as well, because Amazon owns Audible. You're stuck in that Amazon ecosystem. Now, I am a Kindle Unlimited subscriber, but I ended up buying these because I had credit and it was only $8 for all 6. So let's just go in order. How It Unfolds by James S.A. Corey. This was my favorite of the lot, and it's the one that I read first. It's also James S.A. Corey who wrote The Expanse, which I love. So I knew I was going to vibe with the writing style and the big themes, and I did. So the story is told in 2 parts. It's the story of a guy who's basically copied into a program that is supposed to colonize new planets. So he's part of this space program to do that. And I forget what they call it, but basically like they shoot this package to another planet and then it unpacks, it unfolds. And he's there with all his training ready to go to like hit the ground running and start building a colony on this new planet. It's always this original copy is shot through space and shot through space to other planets, but it's always this one version of him. It's not like the copy that's shot to a planet is then packed up and moved on. It's always this original from Earth. So it's the story of that. He like wakes up on a planet, but there's also the story of him and what happened in his previous life before he got to this point where he was packed up to be unpacked on another planet. And no spoilers from there. I really enjoyed it. It's definitely James S. A. Corey themes if you've read any of their work. The second one was Void by Veronica Roth. Veronica Roth I know mainly for her YA science fiction. She wrote the Divergent series. And this one is set on a hauler that goes between, I think, Alpha Centauri. No, what's the other one out there? One of those stars in Alpha Centauri system. And so time is funny because traveling out to these stars and back takes a long time, but the time on the ship is relative. I don't understand relative time at all. So there's a lot of that, how they're trapped in basically a cultural bubble while they travel back and forth on this liner through space, where people on either end are living decades and centuries without them. And then a little murder mystery happens on their ship. And I do like a murder mystery, but it was fine. It was readable. Next was Falling Bodies by Rebecca Roanhorse. I haven't read anything by Rebecca Roanhorse before. And this one I did not enjoy. It was the story of a human teenage boy who's been raised by a political figure of the controlling alien species. They politically and culturally control our solar system. And so this teenage boy is raised with them, but like all teenage boys, a little bit of rebellion, a little bit of drama, and then he's exiled for a second chance. What does he do with his second chance? Read it and find out. Next was The Long Game by Leckie. I've not read any Leckie before, but she gets rave reviews, and I think she's won some like Nebula and Hugo Awards. This one is really cute. It's the story of a squid-like creature who has sentience and can talk to a human who's been trained in their language, and basically tries to come up with a way to manipulate the humans living on their planet in order to gain power with them or over them. It's a very sweet story, and I really enjoyed it. Book 5 in the short story collection was Just Out of Jupiter's Reach by Nnedi Okorafor, and I didn't like this one at all. It is the story of an experiment conducted where people who are genetically compatible with cultivated spaceships are given millions of dollars to bond with a spaceship and then spend 10 years out in space by themselves. Halfway through this experiment, at the 5-year mark, all the people that are participating in the experiment come together for a week. So it's a bit like a closed room situation where all these strangers come together. They're from similar circumstances. They meet up. What happens? I found it entirely uninteresting. Then the final one was Slow Time Between the Stars by John Scalzi, which is about a AI-controlled ship that is built to explore the universe and find planets suitable for humans. But it decides after it's left our solar system that once it passed the heliosphere, that it's just not going to talk to the humans anymore and do its own thing. And that's really, really amusing to me. So the robot does continue on its journey to go and find places where humans could live, but it refuses to report back and just does its own thing over millennia because the distances in space are vast. That's the slow time between the stars. And that's that. 10 things that I read, although all the short stories probably equated to one novel. and I will continue reading. Thank you for hanging out with me, and I will see you next time if you come back here. Otherwise, live a good life.